Mr. President.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, 30 years ago today.
The Senate is currently in a quorum call.
Mr. President, I ask that the quorum call be lifted.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. President, 30 years ago today, millions of Americans gathered around their television sets in homes and classrooms all across this country to watch the Space Shuttle Challenger launch toward the stars. 73 seconds later, everything changed. We stared at our television sets, stunned and brokenhearted. Today, on the 30th anniversary of that terrible tragedy, we remember the heroes we lost. Francis Scobie, Michael Smith, Ronald McNair, Ellison Onizuka, Judith Resnick, Gregory Jarvis, and we remember one more hero, the special person so many little boys and girls had tuned in that day to see, the very first U.S. civilian in space, Christa Corrigan McAuliffe. Christa was born in Boston, Massachusetts. She grew up in nearby Framingham. She attended Marion High School and Framingham State University. She married her high school sweetheart, Steve. She had 2 children, Scott and Caroline, and she eventually became a high school social studies teacher in Concord, New Hampshire. In 1984, Ronald Reagan announced that NASA would send its first private citizen into space, and that person would be a teacher. A few months later, Christa beat out over 11,000 other applicants to become the first teacher in space. Christa was thrilled, a dream come true. She reportedly told Johnny Carson, "If you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, don't ask what seat, just take it." Mr. President, 30 years ago today, Senator Ted Kennedy entered an excerpt of Christa McAuliffe's NASA application into the public record. And I'd like to re-enter it for the record and read it again today. When asked why she wanted to be the first private citizen in space, Christa McAuliffe wrote, "I remember the excitement in my home when the first satellites were launched. My parents were amazed, and I was caught up in their wonder. In school, my classes would gather around the TV and try to follow the rocket as it seemed to jump all over the screen. I remember when Alan Shepard made his historic flight, not even in orbit, and I was thrilled. John Kennedy inspired me with his words about placing a man on the moon, and I still remember a cloudy, rainy night driving through Pennsylvania and hearing the news that the astronauts had landed safely. As a woman, I had been envious of those men who could participate in the space program and who were encouraged to excel in areas of math and science. I felt that a woman had indeed been left outside of one of the most exciting careers available. When Sally Ride and other women began to train as astronauts, I could look among my students and see ahead of them an ever-increasing list of opportunities. I cannot join the space program and restart my life as an astronaut, but this opportunity to connect my abilities as an educator with my interests in history and space is a unique opportunity to fulfill my early fantasies. I watched the space age being born, and I would like to participate." Mr. President, Christa McAuliffe never made it into orbit on January 28th, 1986. She never got a chance to write in her journal about what it was like inside the space shuttle, how it feels to float around, and all the other sorts of things that people who aren't astronauts had wondered about this. She never got to go back to her classroom and tell her children about her magnificent journey. But Christa McAuliffe still teaches. Since 1994, the Christa McAuliffe Center at Framingham State University has provided truly remarkable, innovative, integrated STEM education resources to 12,000 Massachusetts students each year. And Christa McAuliffe's story of a little girl from Framingham who wanted to become a school teacher and got a chance to take the ultimate field trip, a trip into outer space, keeps inspiring little boys and little girls in Massachusetts and around the country, telling them all to reach for the stars. Today we remember Christa McAuliffe and the 6 others we lost in the Space Shuttle Challenger. We remember that day that our country stared at our television sets, stunned and brokenhearted. We honor their memory by continuing, as Krista McAuliffe said, to touch the future, to teach our children and our grandchildren where we've been, where we're going, and why. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.